Are you puzzled by physiotherapy jargon? Exposing the secrets in simple everyday terms. First up, price. Prevention, rest, ice elevation. Just like buying a cool gadget, recovery has a cost too. It's your commitment to exercises and therapy sessions. Next, rice. Nope, not the food. Rice stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. It's the go-to recipe for treating injuries. Now think of police. Your physiotherapist is like the police of your recovery. Protection, optimal loading, ice compression, elevation. They make sure you're following the rules and doing everything right. Then there's peace. Protection, elevation, avoid anti-inflammatories, compression, education. Effective treatment brings calm and relief like a peaceful day after a storm. Lastly, love, load optimization, vascularization exercise. It's all about the care you get from your physiotherapist and the self-love you show by sticking to your treatment. So there you have it, 5 fun analogies to make physiotherapy a little less puzzling. Get well soon.